What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie. Going to do a quick little deep dive into Buffalo Springfield's 3 albums. Going to rank them in the order of my personal preference. Doing this now because elsewhere on the channel, I'm doing a deep dive into Neil Young, and Buffalo Springfield was Neil Young's first band, along with Stephen Stills, along with several members of Poco, Richie Furay, Jim Messina, Rusty Young. They would go on and form Poco. 3 albums. I am a bigger Neil Young fan by far than I am of either Stephen Stills related stuff, or Poco. So generally, not to give away the ending, but my opinion on Buffalo Springfield albums is, as Neil Young goes, generally do these albums. And it might not be a direct connection to the number of Neil Young songs on an album and its success, but it is a coincidence, maybe, or direct connection. I don't know. 3 fantastic albums. One more fantastic than the other two more fantastic than the third, but I think they all 3 have moments. Enough yakking. Let's get on to number 3. Number 3 is their third, 1968's, July 1968's, Last Time Around. Only 2 Neil Young penned songs on here. He only sings one of them. The opening track, On the Way Home, Furay sings it. Beautiful song. He would do this solo acoustic in this era. Beautiful soft rock song. A melody, a vibe, an energy that I think might have laid the groundwork for bands like Poco and America and Orleans and Little River Band and all those bands of the 70s that struck gold with soft rock. Neil Young's laying down the template here, but because it's Neil Young penned, it's just a little more interesting, I think, than some of that other stuff. The other song is I Am a Child, which is really our first glimpse in the sort of Neil Young acoustic, this kind of delicate type of songwriting that he would have a number of really big hits with up through the early part of the 70s. This is our first real snapshot of this part of Neil Young. Great song, great opener, 2 really good songs. The rest of the album is pretty much just inconsistent, though there are some pretty fantastic moments on it. It's So Hard to Wait, a Furay number. I think Neil Young co-wrote it with him, but I think it feels more like a Furay number. Kind of slightly jazzy, slow, kind of a woozy vibe. Okay. Stephen Stills is Pretty Girl Why. Some nice guitar energy here. Kind of jazzy, kind of chill. Okay. Stephen Stills is 4 Days Gone. Nice folk rock, great feel to this, pretty good song. Carefree Country Day by Jim Messina. This song reminds me of Dylan's Peggy Day. It's got that sort of like Day country weird vibe that Dylan's Peggy Day has. Really strolling, carefree, folk country vibe, a little bit jaunty, low-key, chill, very carefree. Side 1, first half of this album closes out with Stephen Stills' Special Care. Kind of a pretty good song. This has almost like a The Band meets Traffic kind of vibe. Nice and kind of jammy. Some really good organ sound. Probably Stephen Stills' best entry on this album. Nice way to close out side A. Side B, we have a song called The Hour of Not Quite Rain. This one, I think Furay co-wrote this with someone named Mickey Callan. This one almost has like a Moody Blues, Days of Future Past orchestral psych vibe that's kind of odd. Kind of really doesn't fit on the album. And I wrote like in my notes that this band is like a rudderless ship at this point, because this song just seems so random and out of like nowhere. Like it just feels like, okay, everybody's just doing what they want to do by this point. The first album pretty much feels like a cohesive band. And yeah, you can hear Neil and you can hear Steven and you can hear Richie, but like they're blended into like making this entire ship move. And then the second album, you can start to see the cracks in the hull and the things starting to fall apart. This album is just like everybody's floating on their own piece of like debris, making music, just maybe floating in the same general direction. Questions is another pretty good song. Stephen Stills, guitar-driven rock vibe. Very, very Stephen Stills-esque of a song. We get I Am a Child, little pop 60s song called Merry Go Round. Uno Mundo, which has a cool multicultural Spanish Latin flavor, one world type lyrics, kind of a Santana-esque jam pre the dropping of Santana's first album. And then Kind Woman, country ballad, which may be responsible for a Foray written country ballad, which may be responsible for the Eagles. Seems like the Eagles tapped into this type of energy for their first several albums. Interesting album, really inconsistent, kind of all over the map. Not really a band as much as three different artists, Foray, Young, and Stills, just making songs and putting them on the same release. But not a horrible listen. But my number 3, Last Time Around. My number 2 is 1967's Buffalo Springfield Again. This only has 3 Neil Young penned songs. He sings on each of them, and they're fantastic. They're very much a young singer-songwriter exploring and developing and doing new things and challenging himself. It's some gorgeous stuff. The opening track of the album is His Mr. Soul. Just starts off with that burst of guitar, that awesome little psych pop middle. Fantastic, fantastic song. Expecting to Fly is on here. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. The duet with Foray on the vocals, amazing. I think it's one of his best melodies. The use of Expecting to Fly in Terry Gilliam's interpretation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is one of the best uses of a song ever. It's after the madness of there's a madness peak when they're really ODing on way too much stuff, and there's a sort of the calm after the storm, and they play this song, and it's magical cinema. And then the closing, Broken Arrow, which is him doing the indulgent 60s thing, starts off with crowd noise and a Mr. Soul tease, and we get these little interludes and different sections and a nice jazzy coda. We're kind of all over the map with weird stuff. Yeah, this is Neil Young experimenting, figuring things out. A great way to end the album. A very 60s, a very awesome 6 minutes snapshot of what music in the late 60s was like and the freedom you had to just kind of do whatever you want. The rest of the album is pretty good, though I do think side 2, the second half of the album, there's a little bit of a lull for me. I don't think the consistency is quite as strong as the opening album, even though Expecting to Fly might be my all-time favorite Buffalo Springfield song. The other stuff I don't think quite holds up, though it is really, really good. Foray's A Child's Claim to Fame, nice country rock, possibly laying the groundwork for the Eagles again. I think we may lay the Eagles the responsibility for their early sound at Foray's feet. I'm saying that like it's a problem, but the Eagles, I have mixed feelings on the Eagles. Every Day, Stephen Stills' number is next, kind of a slightly jazzy psych number, kind of, dare I say, sultry vibe, a late night, city streets, that Eagles reference, that Glenn Frey, that city song that he did, I think, for Miami Vice, that late night, not too crowded city street vibe. Every Day has a good vibe. Then we get Expecting to Fly. Then we get Stephen Stills' Bluebird, which is a really nice poppy, upbeat, guitar-infused rocker. Nice jamming energy here. Really good. A little section for an acoustic guitar solo baked in here. This is kind of we have guitar chops. Let's jam out a little bit. Bluebird, a nice, good song. Pretty sure when I saw them live, when was that, 2011? I saw this tour, saw them at Bonnaroo. I'm pretty sure Bluebird was the song that kind of jammed out a little bit. That was a pretty good show. Surprisingly excellent show. This is where, for me, these songs aren't bad, but they don't quite have, I think, the consistency as the debut album. Hung Upside Down, slower with these nice bursts of energy, a Stephen Stills song, some nice guitar, more guitar jammy energy. 2 Foray songs in a row, Sad Memory and Good Time Boy. Both kind of gentle, soft rock, not too memorable. Good Time Boy is a little more soul-inspired rocker. Doesn't fit the vibe of the album. Good Time Boy just seems out of place. Seems like it maybe should have been last, just because it doesn't really help the flow. Stills is Rock and Roll Woman, which is a fantastic song, a great Stills song, maybe his highlight of Buffalo Springfield, and then the closing, Broken Arrow. So other than really those 2 Foray songs, I think are the weak link on side 2, and that maybe knocks this to the second spot as opposed to the first spot. But that's my number 2, their second, Buffalo Springfield again. And my number 1 is their debut album, Buffalo Springfield. I am specifically doing the latter release. The first release did not contain For What It's Worth. The album was released. What It's Worth became a hit. I guess it was just a single. Then they're like, hey, let's, from now on, can we put For What It's Worth on this album? And so it became the lead-off track. A Stills pen number that is pretty much perfect. It's perfect. Everything about For What It's Worth, it's just perfect. It's a great song. It's a great opening track. Yeah, I have no complaints about that song. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Neil Young songs on this album, and they're all fantastic. One of them on side A, the rest of them all on side B. We get Nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing. Foray sings it. Neil wrote it. Great melody. Weird little psych tempo changes in there just to keep things interesting. Kind of reminds me of something you would have heard on maybe the first 2 Traffic albums, that sort of psych pop energy with those just weird, random sort of out of left field, rhythmic changes that pop up in good, healthy late 60s psych music. This is Neil's psych folk song. That's on side A. Side B, we get 4 songs. The first 3, Flying on the Ground Is Wrong. Beautiful melody. This could have been a Mamas and the Papas track. This could have been a Beatles track. He is showing every soft rock act in the 70s how it's done on these tracks. His ability to write melodies are fantastic. Flying on the Ground Is Wrong. We get a more straightforward rocker called Burned, super catchy, kind of foresees what he's going to do with songs like The Loner, that really tight, effective, kind of no-frills pop rock. Do I have to come right out and say it? Foray sings it. Another amazing melody. Could have been a Bread song, soft in the edges a little more. I could see Johnny Mathis covering this song and during his mid-70s run. Absolutely amazing. And then we skip a song. The penultimate song is another Neil song, Out of My Mind. Probably the one that sounds the most dated late 60s wise. Still a good snapshot of what the late 60s sounds like, and I think a good example of it. But it does sound of its era. A moodier song, a little bit darker. The song, though, it's about somebody who's feeling out of their mind and they're stressed, and sort of the music and the lyrics go pretty well together. Apart from that, we get a whole bunch of still songs. Foray was not yet writing material. The opening, For What It's Worth. The second song, Go and Say Goodbye, which is a really nice country-flavored folk rock, kind of laying the template for what that would be in the future. The sound of the double guitars, regardless of the quality of the songs on any, especially the first 2 albums, the way those guitars all sit in the mix and the interplay between Stills and Young, it's not over the top, it's not too crazy, but it's just so tasty and so rich, and it just sounds so good. Stills' is Sit Down, I Think I Love You is next. Great melody. Another Mamas and the Papas. Could have been a Mamas and the Papas song. Some thick fuzz guitar just kind of comes in there to shake things up, as Neil Young's want to do in any band he's in. Nowadays Clancy follows his song number 4. We get 2 more Stills songs to close out side A. Hot Dusty Roads. Lyrics about a city boy kind of not wanting to be alone, and the idea of him being on hot, dusty roads obviously is a clash, and there's an interesting sort of slower tempo vibe to this, you're struggling to make your way down a hot, dusty road, but at the same time you have the energy and desire to do it, so there's this high energy, but there's this resistance. Just works well musically. And then that album, side A, closes out with Everybody's Wrong. Stephen Stills' most dated, sounds like a late 60s song. Not bad, just sounds like late 60s stuff. Then on side 2, we have those fantastic 4 Neil songs. Then we get a Still song called Leave, kind of a bluesy rocker. Probably by far the most least interesting thing on here, I think. Just pretty much a straightforward guitar-centric blues rocker. And then a song called Pay the Price, which almost has a Cumberland Blues, Country Dead type vibe. It's about a cheating woman. So, yeah. But anyways, yeah, a fantastic, fantastic debut. I think it's their best. I think it's their most consistent. And Neil is 5 for 5. Just absolutely kills it. My number 1, their debut, Buffalo Springfield. That is what they look like in typewritten form in order of their releases. So did that mean they got progressively worse? Yeah, they did. Only because they kind of weren't a band after that first one. On a review I just did, an album, the Sugar Mountain Live at Canterbury, Neil talks about playing with Buffalo Springfield and then tells this kind of somewhat long story about tuning their guitars on stage and how he and Stills would always be out of tune. One would be flat, one would be sharp because you couldn't hear each other across the stage. And he tells this long story all like, yeah, this is what it was like. And then he takes this brief pause and he goes, and then we broke up. And the crowd laughs. Yeah, I don't know why. I think that's entertaining. But yeah, that's all I got. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know your thoughts on these albums, all that kind of stuff. You know how it works. And if you're not familiar with it, go listen to that first album. It's fantastic, as is that second. And if you like those, you'll probably like the third just because it's not that big of a drop-off, I would argue. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.